When the cameras started rolling that night, everyone thought they knew what was coming. Another elimination, another dramatic exit, another social media storm. But no one, and truly no one, expected this reaction. Because while viewers around the world were still processing Sara's elimination, behind the scenes a completely different story was unfolding, one that involved Yaman's father, months of hidden tension, and a reaction so shocking that insiders are still talking about it. For weeks, whispers had circulated about the strained atmosphere between Sara and Can's family. They were polite in public, of course, they always are. But insiders insisted that behind that politeness was a wall of discomfort, frustration, and unspoken warnings. According to one source close to the family, his father never trusted her intentions. He watched everything quietly, but he saw things that others missed. So when Sara's name was read out during the elimination ceremony, the studio sank into the usual silence. Gasps, widened eyes, quick camera cuts. But miles away from the lights and the drama, in a private room where no camera dared to intrude, something entirely different happened. According to a crew member who witnessed it firsthand, the moment her name was announced, his father exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for months. But that wasn't even the shocking part. What followed was a celebration. Not loud, not exaggerated, but unmistakably a gesture of relief mixed with triumph. One insider called it a victory dance, a small shuffle of joy that he didn't bother to hide. As he reportedly said under his breath, "Thank God she's gone." Why? Why would a father react this way to someone leaving a competition? Why would Sara's exit feel like a personal victory for him? The answer lies in a tension that had been building long before that night. According to those close to the situation, Can's father believed that Sara had been pulling his son into a world of unnecessary chaos, public drama, emotional instability, and attention-seeking moves that had already begun affecting Can's reputation. He worried, truly worried, that his son was losing control of his image, his peace, and even his future. Every time Sara appeared on a headline, every time she created a new social media wave, every time rumors of fights or emotional breakdowns leaked, his father saw one thing: danger. So for him, Sara's elimination wasn't just a TV moment. It was freedom, freedom for his son, for the family's peace, and for the carefully built reputation that had been shaking ever so slightly under months of unpredictable drama, and insiders claim that the father didn't even try to hide his reaction. He smiled, one crew member whispered. A real smile. The kind of smile that said, "Finally." But what he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Sara wasn't going to leave quietly. Her exit that night was just the beginning of a new storm headed straight toward the Yaman family. If part 1 was the calm before the storm, part 2 is where the sky truly begins to crack open, because Sara's elimination didn't end anything. In fact, it lit the fuse to something far bigger, far louder, and far more personal than anyone predicted. While Can's father was celebrating in private, thinking the family had finally escaped the ongoing chaos, Sara was experiencing a very different kind of moment, one fueled by shock, humiliation, and a burning sense of injustice. According to sources close to the production, she wasn't just upset, she felt betrayed. She believed someone wanted her gone. And that's when the whispers became louder. Rumors began circulating that Sara believed the Yaman family, especially Can's father, had silently pushed for her elimination. She felt that certain comments, certain reactions, certain backstage interactions had influenced public perception. Whether that was true or not didn't matter. What mattered was that she believed it, and she wasn't going to walk away quietly. Moments after leaving the stage, Sara reportedly locked herself in a dressing room and refused to speak to anyone. One assistant described the scene. She kept repeating, "They wanted this. They wanted me out." She was shaking. It wasn't the reaction of someone who accepted defeat, it was the reaction of someone who was preparing for a fight. Meanwhile, news of Can's father's victory moment began leaking. First as a whisper, then as a rumor, and finally as a full-blown narrative spreading across social media. A crew member who overheard the moment said it simply: "He didn't scream, he didn't laugh loudly, but the look on his face. That was the story." Relief. Pure relief. Sara heard about it within minutes, and that's when everything changed. According to someone close to her inner circle, Sara's entire expression shifted the moment she learned about the father's reaction. The sadness in her voice reportedly turned into something sharper, almost cold. "If they think this is over," she whispered, "they have no idea who they're dealing with." Her team knew exactly what that meant. Sara has always been emotional, yes, but she's also strategic, calculated when necessary, and fiercely protective of her public image. She wasn't going to let a narrative form without defending herself. She wasn't going to let her story be controlled by the Yaman family. And she certainly wasn't going to let Can's father have the last word. So while fans online celebrated or criticized the elimination, Sara began preparing her counterattack, one that would soon spill out on social media, interviews, and even into Can's professional life. A storm was forming, and whether the Yaman family was ready or not didn't matter, because once Sara reached that point, once the humiliation transformed into determination, there was no going back. And here's the part no one expected: someone close to Can confessed that he wasn't handling the situation as calmly as people assumed. Behind the cameras, he looked shaken, not because Sara was eliminated, but because he knew exactly what she was capable of when cornered. The stage was set, the tension was rising, and what happened next would drag the entire family into a drama they thought they'd finally escaped. By the next morning, the story had already slipped out of the studio and begun spreading like wildfire. Headlines, gossip pages, fan accounts, everyone had a version of what happened between Sara and Can Yaman's father. Some exaggerated the details, some twisted them, and some added fuel to a fire that was already burning dangerously fast. But one thing was consistent: the narrative of a victory dance. And that narrative hit Sara like a punch. When she woke up to dozens of messages, screenshots, and trending posts, her reaction was immediate. According to someone close to her, she didn't cry this time. She was calm, too calm. That's when we knew she had decided to fight back. Her first move wasn't a public statement. It wasn't an interview. It wasn't even a cryptic Instagram story. It was a phone call. A phone call to someone who had been silent during the chaos, Can. Sources reveal that Sara attempted to reach him multiple times, but Can refused to answer. Not out of disrespect, at least not intentionally, but because he knew the moment he heard her voice, the emotional weight of everything would hit him again. He wasn't ready. He wasn't stable enough. And he definitely wasn't prepared to face the storm that his father's reaction had unleashed. But Sara didn't interpret it that way. To her, the silence was confirmation. Confirmation that the family had turned their back on her completely. "She felt cornered," said an insider. And when Sara feels cornered, she doesn't break, she pushes back. Meanwhile, Can's father was trying to do the opposite: disappear. The moment he realized the victory dance comment was going viral, he reportedly became furious, not at Sara, not at Can, but at the fact that a private moment had been exposed. According to family friends, he said something that revealed his true fear. "This will hurt my son more than it will ever hurt her." And he was right. The public reaction began shifting. What started as a petty gossip story was now turning into a full-blown PR nightmare. Fans began questioning the family dynamic. Some defended the father, saying he had every right to protect his son. Others accused him of overstepping, controlling, even sabotaging Can's relationships. But the group watching most closely was Sara's followers. They wanted her response. They demanded her response, and she was preparing one. Behind closed doors, her team began crafting a message that wouldn't attack directly, but would imply all the right things. A message that would paint her as the misunderstood one, the emotional one, the one who suffered quietly while others celebrated her downfall. And that's when a shocking twist hit the entire situation. A crew member, someone who had been present in the room with Can's father, came forward claiming that the victory dance wasn't just a rumor. It happened. And he wasn't the only witness. This changed everything, because now, Sara had proof. Now, she had credibility. Now, she had a narrative. Sources say that when Sara heard the confirmation, she leaned back in her chair, folded her arms, and said one simple sentence that sent chills through the room: "Then they just gave me my story." What came next would ignite a public war unlike anything the Yaman family had seen before. The moment Sara realized the rumors were officially confirmed, the entire energy around her shifted. What had started as shock, then humiliation, then anger, finally crystallized into something far more dangerous: strategy. She wasn't just reacting anymore, she was planning. Her team gathered around a long table in a small private meeting room, phones buzzing nonstop, notifications exploding as the story spread across every major platform. Fans were choosing sides. Media outlets were already preparing headlines for the next day. And Sara sat at the center of it all, silent, focused, and eerily composed. She was done being the victim, said someone who was in the room. She wanted to reclaim the narrative. And she knew exactly where to strike first. The plan was simple: not attack the father directly, not accuse anyone outright, not start a war she couldn't win. She would do something much smarter: she would tell her version of the truth. Just enough to make people question everything. But before she could launch her counterattack, something unexpected happened. Ken finally called. The team froze. Sara's breath caught in her chest. The room went silent. He didn't say hello. He didn't ask how she was. He didn't even congratulate or comfort her. Instead, his first words were soft, almost defeated. Why are they saying these things? Not, did you say anything? Not, is it true? But why? He was confused, overwhelmed, and caught between two storms: his father on one side, Sara on the other, and a global audience waiting to see how he'd react. According to a source who saw Sara immediately after the call, she looked heartbroken. She wasn't expecting that tone from him. She wasn't expecting him to sound lost. But the call quickly shifted. When Sara asked him directly if the victory dance actually happened, there was a long pause. Too long. The kind of pause that says more than words ever could, and then Ken whispered, "I can't control what other people do." That was it.no denial.no explanation.no defense. For Sara, that wasn't an answer, it was confirmation. The conversation didn't end in a fight, but it also didn't end in healing. It simply stopped. Ken hung up sounding exhausted, and Sara was left staring at the phone with a mixture of shock and clarity in her eyes, because now she knew, the father would never protect her. Ken couldn't protect her, and if she didn't protect herself, no one else would. Within an hour, her team drafted a subtle but powerful statement. Not a direct attack, she was too smart for that. Instead, it was a carefully crafted message filled with emotional undertones and quiet implications: a message about respect, a message about disappointment, a message about being celebrated for leaving rather than supported for trying. Her followers went wild, comments flooded in. Support poured from every direction, but the real explosion came from the one place no one expected: the Turkish press. They seized the story instantly, turning a backstage rumor into national controversy. Suddenly, it wasn't just a father's reaction. It wasn't even about Sara anymore. It became a bigger question: was there a fracture inside the Yaman family? And perhaps even more explosive, was Ken losing control of his personal life again? By the time the scandal reached its peak, the Yaman family was already under a microscope. What began as a whispered rumor had transformed into an international spectacle. Every outlet, from Turkish morning shows to American celebrity podcasts, was dissecting the same burning question: why did Ken Yaman's father celebrate Sara's elimination? But while the world debated, the real storm was happening privately, inside the Yaman household. According to a family insider, Ken came home that night looking exhausted, drained, and visibly shaken. He wasn't angry, he wasn't defensive, he was simply tired. Tired of drama. Tired of misinterpretations. Tired of being trapped between loyalty and love, truth and perception, family and personal responsibility. His father, sitting in the dimly lit living room, tried to speak first. "It was just a moment," he said quietly, "a moment of relief. Nothing more." But for Ken, it wasn't that simple. Not anymore, because whether it was meant harmlessly or not, that moment had exploded into a public war. One that painted him as weak, Sara as betrayed, and the family as fractured. And worse, it had triggered a storm he knew very well: Sara's retaliation. Rumors began circulating that Sara was preparing a tell-all interview, one where she wouldn't expose everything, just enough to shake the ground beneath the Yaman family. Enough to make people question them. Enough to keep her narrative alive. And honestly, she didn't even need to lie, she only needed to ask one devastating question: why was my elimination celebrated? A question that would haunt the family far more than any accusation. Meanwhile, Ken found himself torn between two truths. Truth #1. His father acted out of fear that Sara's influence was damaging his son's peace, career, and emotional balance. Truth #2. Sara deserved better than to feel humiliated, isolated, or ganged up on. He doesn't want war, said a close friend. He wants closure. But closure is the one thing no one is offering him. As pressure mounted, the producers of the show stepped in, urging all parties to stay silent. But silence wasn't helping. Instead, it made the public hungrier, more suspicious, more desperate for answers, and that's when the defining moment happened. Sara unexpectedly posted a short message online: no accusations, no drama, no bitterness. Just one line: some people celebrate your departure because they feared your presence. It was elegant, it was sharp, it was lethal. Within minutes, the post trended worldwide, fanbases erupted, comment sections exploded. The story transformed from "did the father celebrate?" to something far more personal. What was Sara's presence that the Yaman family feared? Ken, sitting alone in his apartment, read the post 3 times. He knew exactly what she meant. And for the first time since the drama began, he allowed himself to feel the weight of it, not because he agreed with her. Not because he blamed his father, but because, deep down, he realized something heartbreaking. This was never about the elimination, it was about everything that came before it, and everything they never said to each other. In the end, no victory dance mattered. No viral rumor mattered. No trending headline mattered, because the real story, the one no one would ever fully understand, was that two people who once cared for each other were now standing on opposite sides of a storm neither of them wanted. And somewhere in the middle, caught between loyalty and loss, stood Ken Yaman, trying to clean up a mess he didn't create, trying to protect a peace he no longer had, and trying to accept that some endings didn't come with closure, only consequences.